Honorable visitors, the Chair and Deputy Chair of the House Committee on COVID infection, the Chairman of the Presidential Task Force, members of the PTF, ladies and gentlemen of the press, good evening. I would like to start first of all by going through the key highlights of the implementation guidelines for the containment of COVID-19. Before I do that, I would like to emphasize that we have not changed a lot of things. What we had 2 weeks ago will continue. So effective from Monday, the 18th of May, the easing of the lockdown remains largely the same and will be characterized by the following enforceable actions, which will include the mandatory use of non-medical face masks, the mandatory provision of hand-washing facilities and sanitizers in all public spaces, the restrictions in interstate travel and intrastate travel as well, based on certain conditions which I will outline in a few minutes, and the adaptation of offices and businesses to ensure physical distancing, including the use of floor markings, crowd control, and mass gathering reduction strategies. The mass gathering of more than 20 people outside of a workplace is still prohibited. We will ensure controlled access to markets and locations of economic activities. Mandatory temperature checks will continue in public spaces with physical distancing of 2 meters. All passenger flights will remain banned, and there will be mandatory supervised isolation of persons arriving from outside the country for at least 14 days. In terms of the regulation of these guidelines, we will continue to work with local authorities and encourage them to create mobile courts for immediate prosecution of offenders, particularly those who violate guidelines relating to face mask covering, relating to monitoring of temperature, or institutions that fail to comply with these protocols, as well as restrictions on interstate movement. In terms of the detail, just wanted to remind the general public that for Lagos, Ogun, and FCT, the curfews that have been imposed overnight, and including the nationwide application of this, will continue from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. The lockdown in Kano has been extended, as we said at the beginning of the week, for another 2 weeks. In terms of general movement, people may go out to buy necessary foods and for exercise. Movement between local government areas is strongly discouraged unless for critical reasons such as healthcare and work. The public are advised to avoid unnecessary contact with people. Interstate travel is restricted except for essential travel, such as those involved with the supply chain and services, such as goods, agricultural products with a limited capacity of accompanying personnel, petroleum products, relief items and supplies, construction supplies, and registered courier services. Within state borders, the restrictions relating to reduced occupancy for buses, taxis, and tricycles will be maintained. Travel should be between the hours of 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. For buses and motor parks, the same opening hours apply between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. For agriculture, trucks bearing agricultural and animal products must be allowed easy passage, and companies involved in food processing can also continue with their operations. For construction sites, we are asking for state governments to please take up responsibility for the provision of waivers to allow the construction of critical roads to resume, but this should be limited to the hours of 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. For banks and other financial institutions as well as offices, now is the opportunity to start adjusting to the new life post-COVID as we lift restrictions over the next 2 weeks. We're therefore asking banks and offices to make allowance for physical distancing measures both inside and outside their premises, to ensure that staff working in the offices are limited to no more than 50% capacity, and to encourage online banking as well as working from home. Offices are allowed to open for the same hours of 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., including banks. Shift work is encouraged for manufacturing and pharmaceutical industries, but pharmacy shops will continue to remain open overnight as required. The hours of 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. opening hours will remain relevant not only for offices and banks, but also for supermarkets. And we are also reducing the number of hours that restaurants can open through the same 8 a.m. to p.m. time limit. Clubs, bars, beer parlors, and gardens, etc. will remain closed, including recreational parks and communal sport areas. All schools are also to remain closed till further evaluation. State government and security agencies are enjoined to ensure effective and strict enforcement of these guidelines. I'll now briefly talk about Salah, because we're all going into Salah, and to say that COVID infection has not gone away. It is still very much with us. We really need to respect the guidelines, particularly those related to self-distancing rules and avoidance of mass gatherings. We should make sure that we use face masks as part of our Salah attire for this year. And I would like to call out, particularly for those that are vulnerable to these infections, especially the elderly above the age of 65. If you are diabetic, if you have an underlying health problem, you have a personal responsibility for looking after your health. Do not put yourself at risk this Salah. COVID will go away eventually. The pandemic will go away. But we would like to be part of those that see it go away. There will be other Salahs. There will be other Salahs, but only if we are alive. If we are not, then really it becomes an issue. So as we celebrate Salah, let us not allow COVID to celebrate Salah with us. Let us commit to stay alive. Let us commit to protect ourselves and protect our loved ones from this infection. Thank you.